Hi everybody, so I'm just going to quickly go through and show you how to set up a simple joint chain inside this arm here. So this was a lesson that we did in class, and rather than using the vertex snap, there's another option that we have, and that's called snap to center, and that's this guy here, this little magnet. And what that does is anything I create will snap to the center of this volume, so it'll snap to the center of inside this mesh. So what I can do is, once I've got the skeleton tool, joint tool, I can click inside here and start creating a joint chain for this character's hand. We don't have to get them exactly right at the first time we click. What we can do, of course, is go in and edit each chain holding down the insert or the home key, depending on what operating system you're using. And it can be useful sometimes to switch on wireframe on shaded as well, just to see where a bit more detailed information about the mesh and how that's being put together. So we can very quickly go through, and I'll just add in the extra joints for the fingers. Okay, so a couple of things too to note about setting up the joints in our skeleton is making sure that things like the elbow are a bit further back. We don't rotate our elbow right from the center. We tend to rotate a little bit from further back inside the arm. And also that our knuckle joints are relatively far back in the hand, that they're not too close, because they don't really pivot from up here, it actually pivots from a little bit further back inside the hand. But once we have our joint chain finished, the next thing to do is make sure we go through and name our joints. And this is very important because later on when we come to skinning, we want to be able to look at our joint chain very easily and clearly and know exactly where we are in our scene file. And if I hold down shift and click the plus button here, you can see all the joints will open up. So that's just this little plus symbol here. I hold down shift, left click, and my whole hierarchy will open up here in the outliner. And it's just important to go through and name each of these joints with a name that makes sense. I like to use a naming convention that is shoulder, JNT for joint, and then _L for the left joint, and then I go down through the elbow joint, left, and I'll just go through and name all the rest of these joints. Okay, so once we've got our joints positioned correctly and everything is nice and clearly labeled, now I also like to use an A, B, C, D iteration for joints that are all part of the same chain. Just it helps me look straight away and tell the A joint's at the top of the chain, and I know that the B joint will be the next one down, C will be that one, and then the D will be the lowest. Once you've got your joint chain, the next thing to check is the joint orientation. Now if we look really closely at these joints, we can actually see there's a little axis that's pointing down the joint chain, and because of the way this was created, it should be all pointing the correct direction. But when I come in here and I look at things like the wrist, some of these fingers, we need to make sure that our joints are flowing in the right direction, and to do that we have something called the joint orientation tool. This is more apparent if we've spent a lot more time moving and positioning our joints around. Remember, we only want to translate joints when we're rigging. We don't want to rotate them. We only rotate them to test them. So the joint orientation tool is orient joint tool, options. And if I select everything here in the outliner and I hit toggle visibility axis, I should be able to see where all these joints are facing, and they all look pretty good at the moment based on how they were created. Anyway, I'll just hit apply. You see there's a slight twist, and as it just kind of lines everything up, and it's looking pretty good. I'll go through, shift select everything again, and then just toggle visibility axis off. So this is a toggle, so if I want to just work on one joint, I can just hit toggle visibility, toggle it on and off. And what we notice when we go to that wrist joint is that wrist joint is not pointing down the x-axis in the way that we'd like it to. It doesn't quite make sense. So we have to go through and fix that manually. And to do that, we need to go and go into a component mode. Now this might be a bit difficult to see. If you go up here, some of these guys are hidden. So what you need to do is look for this one, If it's not visible, it might be that it's tucked underneath one of these little pop-out menus. So just pop that open. We need to be in component mode, and we need to click this little question mark here, which is going to let us go in and right click and check that rotation axis is on. Okay, cool. I can see these now. I can go in and edit them. Now the trouble with this is it wants to keep grabbing the mesh because it thinks the mesh is the priority. So first up, just go and hide the mesh. So just go show polygons and hide it, and then I should be able to go in and grab that joint. Once I've got the joint selected, there we go, just grab that little cross. I can rotate that manually. Now I'm having a bit of trouble rotating it, and that's because I'm in local rotation mode. So if I hold for my rotation world, okay, then I can go in and do that. So that's holding down E on the keyboard, left mouse button click, and just check and make sure that you're in world rotation. Right now I can line that up how I want it, so it's looking, it's pointing down the chain. When I've got that done, just click this box here, and it will flick back to regular selection mode, and then we can show our polygons. Check that wrist. Yep. Let's check it in gimbal mode. Yep. Great. That's flowing the direction that I want it to flow. Fantastic. Now next thing up is to bind the arm, so I select the shoulder joint, select the mesh, go to skin, bind skin, smooth bind options, and I'm going to choose joint hierarchy. I'm going to choose heat map for the bind method and set the weight distribution to neighbors, and then hit bind skin. And then we can now we can start rotating the joints to test them now that it's bound, and we can start just checking and seeing how that's going to deform. Checking our fingers. Yep, that's looking great. Checking our hand control. And that's that one.